So Scott, maybe introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll go into some questions.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Scott Augenbaum. I am a retired FBI supervisory special agent. I had an amazing 30-year career starting in 1988 in New York City as a support employee. I was an FBI agent in Syracuse, New York from 1995 till 2003. And that's when I had the opportunity to work a lot of cross-border crimes with my friends with
Right.
the OPP and the RCMP. In 2003, I went to FBI headquarters. I worked in the FBI cyber division. I came to Nashville in 2006. I led the cyber crime task force where I dealt with 1,000 cybercrime victims. I retired on my 50th birthday in 2018. And it was a very, very tough decision to actually retire from the FBI because I had a job that I loved to do. And it's been 8 years since I've retired, and I've taken the best elements of my FBI time and I use what I've learned with one goal, and that is to help prevent individuals and organizations from becoming the next cybercrime victim. Today, I speak around the world at different conferences. I'm a contributor to major cable network news. And unfortunately, to this day, I still feel like I'm an advocate for cybercrime victims because unfortunately, they call me when there's no one else to talk to.
Wonderful. Well, Scott, thank you for that background. Now, I have to ask you, as a little boy or growing up, did you always want to be in the FBI?
No, No, and that's the crazy part about this story. I grew up in New York City, raised by a single mom in the 70s and 80s. So we all know how challenging that was for both of us. I didn't do very well in school. I kind of was this kid with undiagnosed ADHD, which I've turned into a superpower. But my mom was just happy when I was cruising along. When I was going from eighth grade to ninth grade, she was thrilled. When I graduated high school with a 72 average, she was happy. I was going to community college. When I went to community college, I said I was going to get my act together. I didn't get my act together at a 2.3 grade point average. When the world is, when you have such a, when you're floating between below average and mediocre, the world isn't knocking down your doors with opportunities. But my mom, who's 90 years old to this day, was a forward thinker, and she did what we tell parents not to do. She took things into her own hands, and she actually filled out an application for me to become a file clerk with the FBI when I was 20
Wow.
years old. And that's how I got my start in this whole game because that's when I had to get my act together. So if it wasn't for the forward thinking of mom, I have no idea where I would be today.
That's super interesting. Wow. So tell me, how did your career evolve from there a little bit? Did you have any like pivotal moments or
Oh,
mentors or experiences kind of led you into cyber from there?
well, it's kind of an interesting story because for 6 years, I was a clerical employee for we called it a clerk for the FBI, and my job was to help the FBI agents do whatever it was they did. And I went back to school at night. I finished up my bachelor's with a 3.7. I have to brag about that, is when you go from a
Nice.
2.3. And then I started working on an MBA in finance and technology and really was having a great time working within the FBI. Had a great mentor at the time who allowed me a lot of flexibility to go back to school at night. You know, I was a full-time student almost at night from age 20 to 26. And an opportunity opened up in 1994, which was about 31 years ago, to become an FBI agent. And there was a hiring freeze from 91 to 94. And I'm working on an MBA in finance and technology at Fordham University. I have no desire to be an FBI agent. I want to go down to the world of Wall Street. I want to
All
work in
right.
investment banking. And my boss, Bob, who was like a father figure to me, looked at me and said, "You're going to put in to become an FBI agent. It's very prestigious." And I'm like, "Yes, sir." And I'm working with all these other guys. This is all they wanted to do. And the next thing I know, it's almost 31 years ago. I wind up at the FBI Academy at the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia, going, what the heck did I do to my life? And, I really get into it. I have to work really hard. It was the most challenging thing in my life. It was the first time in my life I really had to go out of my comfort zone. And from there, I'm all excited to go back to New York City. If I can't work in the world of investment banking, then I'm going to go back and put all these bad guys in jail. It was Michael Milken and all
Right.
of them. Uh, and then I get transferred to Syracuse, New York. And I was like, what the heck did I do to my life? I grow up in a big city, and here we are, on Route 81 in the New York State Thruway, and I'm covering up to Messina, New York, and Alexandria Bay, which was part of my territory. And I was like, oh my goodness. But let me tell you, Francois, I had the time of my life from 1995 to 2003 being a young FBI agent.
Nice. Nice. So where did cyber come along during that path? I
Well,
mean,
that's an interesting thing. So here I am. It's 1995. If you want me to define the role of an FBI agent in 1995, it was so simple. We had bad people who did bad things to
right.
good people. And I worked with state, local, and Canadian law enforcement, and we put these bad guys in jail. What a fun and
Yeah.
exciting job for a 27-year-old kid from Brooklyn, New York, playing cops and robbers. And I was part of the Canadian American Law Enforcement Cooperative. I was working these cases cross-border. And then in 1997, I get a call from a small internet service provider in Fulton, New York, talking about stolen property on the internet. And since I was the only agent in the office in 1997 with advanced computer skills, they asked me to go up there. Can you tell me, Francois, what do you think are advanced computer skills in 1997?
1997. Wow, I kind of remember. The internet was quite new, probably about 4 or 5 years, and as far as usage for the common for us common people, and yeah, basic. Sometimes some of it was still dial-up at the time.
Yeah. And since I was the only person who knew how to use America Online, I became the cyber guy in the office, which was not the cool and fun, sexy job to have. And then in 1998, the FBI became part of the National Infrastructure Protection Center. It was called NIPSI, which
Mhm.
was back before the Department of Homeland Security. And every one of the 56 field offices throughout the United States had to have a NIPSI agent. And since I knew how to use AOL, I was the guy. And that was my responsibility. And it was not the cool, fun, sexy job to have. I mean, we had 8 agents out of the Syracuse office. We had a dedicated person who was bank robbery, fugitive. We had two
Right.
female agents. One was on the Marshals task force, one was on the DEA task force, and I was dealing with thrill seekers and I was dealing with amateurs. Cyber was in its infancy, and we weren't really concerned about cybercrime. We were concerned about National Infrastructure Protection Center, hostile foreign governments getting into the 16 pieces of infrastructure causing damage. And I became the guy. And like I said, not the cool, fun, sexy job to have. The events of September 11th changed the FBI and the world
Absolutely.
forever. Terrorism, number one priority, counterintelligence, number two priority, and preventing acts of cybercrime, number three. And during the same period of time, the FBI creates a cyber division in Washington, D.C. to combat this emerging threat. Because what do we realize now? Anyone with dial-up in a computer anywhere around the world can be an adversary. So the FBI forms this cyber division in 2002. I get promoted as a supervisor in 2003. And all of my friends make fun of me. They tell me this cybercrime problem is going to go away by 2006, and it's going to be solved by a lot of really, really smart people and technology. And that's really hasn't worked out. So here we are, 2006, the FBI Cyber Division. We work on the national cyber strategy. We put cyber people in our embassies all around the world. We start hiring people in the field to work cybercrime. We build 56 cyber task forces in all of the offices. And so now I'm being groomed because of my experience in DC to lead up one of these offices. So I take the job in Nashville, Tennessee, because I'm like, well, it's Nashville, Tennessee. How bad, a beautiful place to live, but there's nothing going on in Nashville. And soon do I realize that Nashville area, we had FedEx in Memphis, we have Vanderbilt University, we have Bridgestone, we have Nissan. We got a lot of critical pieces of information. So my job is to build the reactive portion of the squad. But one of the things that I start doing is building a proactive program to be able to sit and talk to these companies before they have a problem. And I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people when I started doing that program.
Super interesting. So has most of your experience come from a lot of hands-on? Obviously, you've worked on probably hundreds, thousands of cases, very complex ones. Mostly hands-on, learning from, getting your hands dirty and
Well, yeah,
learning how things worked.
well, to a point, I manage some very, very technical people. On paper, I look brilliant. And I said in quotes. I went back, I got an MBA in technology. I got a graduate certificate. I got 8 SAN
Oh,
certifications.
okay.
And then one of the things that really I realized after dealing with it took me years and years to figure this out because now we're progressing through the cybercrime problem. If we go back in time, I get there in 2007, I get there, we build up the squad. 2007 to 2009 is a very, very quiet little time for us. We're working a lot of things behind the scene, but it's really not public. You
Right.
know, we're dealing with foreign governments that are really destroying US. They're, the greatest theft of intellectual property we're seeing from the Chinese government 2007 to 2010. We're seeing Russian organized crime. We're seeing other threats from foreign powers such as Iran. And then in about kind of really picks up a little bit, for about 2010. I mean, we have so many cases going on that the Chinese are into every bit of infrastructure that we have. I think everything's going to change in 2013 when the Target breach happens. Uh, but it really didn't, because what do we have in 2013? We have the Target breach. I think that's a game changer. We have a major data breach in Nashville where we see the Chinese government steal healthcare information. It continues to get worse and worse. 2016, I'm warning companies about the growing ransomware problem. I'm dealing with the business email compromise problem. And then I kind of see a shift. And the shift is the cyber criminals are starting to really, really go after regular people like us, because now the banking industry is really tightening up their defenses. So the cyber criminal's not robbing banks, he's robbing bank customers. And during my decades with the FBI, and this is what I want to talk about, this is the cornerstone for everything that I deal with, and I call it the four truths of cybersecurity. And it really is kind of this litmus test where it's eventually everything fell through the first thing, these things. The first truth is none of my victims ever expect to be a victim. Why would anyone want to target us? We don't have anything worth stealing. We're a small business. We're a nonprofit organization. I've had $11 billion publicly traded, privately held companies tell me that they're not worried about being a victim because they're not on the New York Stock Exchange. I had companies on the New York Stock Exchange tell me they weren't worried because they were only a $5.8 billion company. I once had a $500 million company tell me that they're not worried because they're only a $500 million. And I'm like, and it was like that with everyone that I talked to. Nobody ever expected to be a victim. And that's the first truth. The second truth is when the bad guys steal your stuff, and think about this, you're a company, you're impacted with
Yeah.
ransomware, you have a major data breach, or all of a sudden your senior parent loses $75,000 through a social engineering scam. When you contact law enforcement doesn't have a magic wand to fix the problem. The consultants don't have a magic wand. The information security marketplace is not going to get your money back or your data back or your reputation back, or even worse, if it happens to be your kids. So that's the second truth. The third truth is putting the bad guys in jail is really more challenging than ever because today our adversaries are located overseas. And with all the global conflict, the Russian government, the Chinese government aren't taking grand jury subpoenas. They're not
Right.
cooperating with us. We're seeing organized crime groups pop up in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar. We're still dealing with the West Africans. And today, what we're seeing is in the old days in the FBI, we used to deal with national security, which was foreign governments and organized crime. Today, it's kind of merged. And then the next thing is when I retired in 2018, I didn't think the problem can get any worse than it actually is. I used to use a slide and it just shows the cybercrime problem. The cybercrime problems keeps getting worse year after year. And I've noticed that we keep spending more and more money. So it's probably about 2016 or so, and I have this major epiphany. I'm starting to get depressed. I joined the FBI to help people. But I can't. I can't get anyone's money back. I can't put anyone in jail. I'm
Yeah.
dealing with people face to face. When a big Fortune 500 company has a data breach, sucks to be them.
Mhm.
But when someone loses their life savings
Yeah.
and you can't do anything, it's really, really troubling. And that's when I realized the fourth truth to cybersecurity, that almost 90% of what I dealt with easily could have been prevented if my end users were only armed with a couple of key pieces of information. So when I retired in 2018, that was kind of my passion project, was to take whatever I learned and to work with companies, individuals, unfortunately, anyone who would listen and be able to take what I've learned, which isn't rocket science. And one of the big things that I think we've dealt with and where we have completely went off track, and especially in the information security marketplace, is we're trying to solve a technology solution for a people problem.
Right.
And that's really kind of what I do today. So I do workshops, I build things, I'm on podcast, I'm on YouTube. But in the end, I get hired by companies to help take this, what I called was the cybersecure mindset. And that was born out of my book, The Secret to Cybersecurity.
So let's stop there. That was amazing. And I'd like to come back in a bit to talk about some of the work you do. But let's talk about some of the situations that are creating part of this problem. Education, as an example. How early should cyber education start? Who's responsible for it? What types of programs would work best? Everything's digital now, and it's going to get even more digital. And now AI has come into the equation over the last couple of years. So, what are your thoughts about education and cyber awareness education? How do we embed that more into our educational systems and get people to actually care about it?
It's a very difficult thing. That's been one of my big frustrations in life because people want to learn to there's three areas that I see. People will want to learn spend money on health. So if I wrote a book like the FBI Diet Guide,
Right.
would have sold like crazy. If I would have said an FBI agent's journey to pick up women, it would sell because health, wealth, and relationships. But when it comes to keeping people safe and having people do simple things, because when I go out all the time, I have the greatest research stage in the world. I get to talk to people, I get to get in front of 300 people multiple times, sometimes once a week, and I'm asking them questions. And I'm asking them, are you doing this? How are you doing that? And these are simple things because, I break it down at a certain point where I'm like now, like I have this little quiz that I kind of do and I can do it in 2 minutes. I can teach it in a workshop, but most people aren't doing these simple things, and these
Right.
simple things are leading to cybercrime, which leads me to the cybersecurity awareness marketplace that does a great job of providing 30 minutes of content to check the box. And it's really being built for compliance purposes. And what is
Right.
compliance? Checking a box. And my whole point is if I can teach people to stay safe at home, they will take those skill sets and they will bring them to work. So now I am doubling down on that. And that's what, because my goal is to keep people safe. So, there's plenty of off-the-shelf training. If they were great, I wouldn't have a great career as I do because I get brought in by some of the largest companies in the United States to help them change their mindset. So, but everyone comes back, always comes back to the first truth about cybersecurity. Why do people not take it seriously? Because they don't think it's going to impact me. And when we
Right.
talk about organizations, and I'm going to ask you a question. How long does the average C-suite employee stay at a company today compared to 15, 20 years ago?
3 to 5 years, probably.
And what do they want to do within 3 to 5 years? Make the
They want to be
company,
promoted.
but make the company as efficient as possible.
Sure, of course.
And organizations are not looking at this as an investment. They're looking at this as a cost.
Right. Do you
So
think that
that,
mindset is starting to change, Scott?
nah, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't, I listen, I deal with a lot of publicly traded companies. I drink a lot of beers and smoke a lot of
Right.
cigars with information security people, and all of them are being told to do more with less. I'm not seeing that as much in the financial services
Right.
sector, which is very, very highly regulated here in the US.
Hmm.
But in other situations, what you tell the public and what you actually do are two different things because I hate to say it, it controls most organizations in the United States, the bottom line. And it's the same thing
Yeah,
in Canada. And now we have to
absolutely.
deal with small businesses, and small businesses don't have the resources to be able to do these types of things. So now, unfortunately, everyone's trying to push in a technology solution, which is a silver
Mhm.
bullet. And all I tell people is, I don't really care what you spend your money on, but if you don't do these simple steps that I talk about, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's true. It doesn't matter what technology you bring in if your people are still making, basic mistakes at the front end.
I was doing a talk about 4 or 5 months ago. I was doing a big talk in Dallas, Texas. And this woman, it was in the real estate sector, a lot of cybercrime in the real estate sector. And some woman came to me with a depressed look. and said, Scott, what I think you're telling me is we're not going to ever go back to where we were 15 years ago, where you gave your parents, you gave your kids a cell phone, they made calls. Today, mobile technology is an entryway into all of our lives. The cyber criminals realize this. Where everyone, I mean, I'm building training programs for senior living facilities because nobody's hacking into the senior living facility. They're going after the end users.
Right. Yeah.
And whose responsibility is it to protect the end users? The IT guy is like, listen, my job's the network. It's the same thing with identity theft. There's a huge gap in the market. And the reason there's a gap in the market is people in the consumer market, they're overwhelmed. They believe that if they just buy identity theft protection or maybe an antivirus, they're going to be okay. And it's not that. There's work involved in what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, if you can't put it into a TikTok video, it's just not going to be effective.
A good point. It's rare that people read a little bit more than 30 seconds beyond, right? So,
Well, it's hard. It's hard. And, I've been
yeah,
creating videos and video training series, and I got to make my videos probably a minute and shorter. I got to get
yeah.
so to the point that it's just, or else people won't pay attention.
So two more questions. If you had one piece of advice to give to an individual or potentially a business, and what would it be?
One piece of advice is really kind of hard, but I would say the cornerstone is the lack of sophistication that is required by a so-called cyber criminal to destroy your business is all available on the internet.
Right.
The level of simplicity involved with the use of artificial intelligence, it's mind-boggling. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part of that is almost everything we talked about could be prevented. And that's really what my next book is going to be about. That's really what I talk about is that if I had 2 minutes and I can go back in time and I could tell my victims these couple of things, I'd prevent most cybercrime. If I would explain to them social engineering is the number one tool in the cyber criminals tool belt, and it's some social engineering is tricking us into doing things we normally wouldn't do. And it's so much more than email. I don't want to hear anyone say, well, we got a phishing simulator. It's great, but it's text messages, it's telephone calls, it's QR code phishing, it's social engineering account hijackings, it's pop-ups, it's
Yeah.
malvertising, it's the business email compromise. I, I I have built programs for companies just based on that to get people aware, understanding social engineering. The number two thing is realizing all it takes is an account compromise. All the bad guy needs to do is steal your username and password. And there's plenty of usernames and passwords on the dark web.
For sure.
Tons.
So final question, Scott. You've accomplished so much, and you're still going and doing some amazing work with your current company. What's the legacy you want to leave behind?
I want to help 1 million people over the next 5 years prevent themselves from becoming the next cybercrime victim by giving them steps to do. I'm not saying I need 1 million customers. I don't need 1 million customers. Everything that I talk about, I give away all my content. That's the joke in what I do in my play on the information security marketplace. You don't need to hire me. Go watch my videos. I do them every day on LinkedIn. Everything you need to prevent basic cybercrime victimization could be prevented. I've been out of the FBI for 8 years, I still talk to my guys. I go, what's new? Same stuff, the account compromise.
Right.
Nobody's using two-factor authentication. That's it. We're still dealing, if you would hear my presentation today and you would hear my presentation from 15 years ago, very little has changed. So that's kind of what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I like to consider myself more of a content creator and an advocate for victims because they all call me because unfortunately law enforcement can't help them. So I want to get that message out to as many people as possible.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. It's been a pleasure. One of the key mission goals of the Canadian Cybersecurity Network is cybersecurity awareness. We know how important it is. So, really appreciate your time today.
Well, that is awesome.
So, I'll stop there.